Hi, and welcome to this bonus episode of Life Without Cravings. Today I have a guest with me, and his name is Jonathan Griffiths, and he's here today to talk a little bit about tell you about his story about how he was doing bodybuilding and how that can lead to binge eating disorder and what he did to get out of that. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here today and wanted to come on and talk about this important topic.
Yeah, hey Pim, thanks for having me on. So I come from a background as bodybuilding, as you've mentioned. My history has been basically a lot of like the bulking, cutting cycle. So you'd eat a lot of food to gain weight, and oftentimes it wouldn't be lean body mass sort of thing, like muscle.
Yeah,
But it would be a bit of water, a bit of inflammation. Your body doesn't feel too great, but you just stick at it anyway because you got to eat big to get big, sort of thing. That's what they say, but I think there's nuance to that. I think it works to an extent, but it also doesn't work in some other ways. But also the cutting as well. So you're strict back on what you're eating just in general, and you try and get a low body fat. And I've noticed in the industry, at least from my perspective, is that there's a lot of disordered eating. It's not just the anorexia, the bulimia side of it. That's particularly in women. Women want to be smaller, generally speaking. Men want to be bigger. So it's a lot of the binge eating. So they'll say, all right, I've done leg day today. I've done a hard workout. I'm going to go to McDonald's and have 3/4 pounds of cheese, 2 large portions of fries and a milkshake. And they'll justify that and think that's going to be good for my results. It's going to be good for my gains and my sort of outcome. But I've learned some different perspectives along the way, speaking to people like Bart Kay, Harry Sopanos, listening to people, Sean Baker, so many different sort of interesting and inspirational people I consider idols in this sort of health space online. And I've come to my own conclusions about it all, and I've changed a lot of what I'm doing. And that seems to be reflecting onto the fact that my health now is, in some cases, a better state than it was before when I was using a typical bodybuilding diet and using those sort of bulking cutting cycles, as I mentioned.
yeah. So how long have you actually been competing in bodybuilding?
So my first show was in 2012, and I think I was around, God, this is going back a bit, 16 years old. So I was, sort of a teen competitor.
Yeah.
I've probably averaged about a show every year or near enough since then. And basically I did a natural show. Like the first 3 shows were drug free. The shows beyond that, I used performance enhancing drugs, and it seems more often than not that the performance enhancing drug users, although they're more health conscious in some ways, they do use it almost as like a crutch sort of thing to sort of say, I use this so I can get away with a bit of a shoddier diet and eat a bit more and not suffer with the impacts on it, like my digestion, heart, and other sort of health markers.
That's crazy. So what's kind of the talk in the bodybuilding circle? Is it like, do people in general just assume that this is how you need to do it and this is how you're going to treat your food, and there is it's too much pain involved with actually eating properly? Or is it more that eating properly will never get you the results that you want?
I think there's margins where people have the idea that you have to consume extraordinary amounts to gain muscle. I mean, for me to gain muscle, I've said, in all honesty, I've gained 10 kilos of muscle in about a year and a half using less performance enhancing drugs. I'm currently not using any, haven't used any for about 3-4 months now. Before that, I didn't even use any for like 6-7 months before that even. So, and I've actually been eating less in that time. So my calorie intake before might be a steady 5, like say on an average year, so a year and a half, and before that, it might be 5,500 calories every day will be the average. I don't really believe in calories, but that's just to give people a reference terms of how much food that is.
That's a lot.
Not how my body deals with it. I'm sure Bart, your partner, has some thoughts about that as well. So don't mention
He's not
that.
here.
He's not here. Okay, so yeah, then basically now I've made those sort of muscle gains at my advanced training years, doing particularly a carnivorous diet. I've been on and off a few times, but the majority of the last year and a half I've been doing a carnivore diet. I sort of played with it maybe 2.5 years ago. That's before I even knew it was the carnivore diet. It was just something I slipped into. So yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So did you start eating this way 10 years ago, or was that something that kind of came on gradually? And how did that all happen?
It came on gradually. So what I'd find, like you say, 10 or so years ago, is that I had quite a young body. So I wasn't eating enough animal foods. I know that looking back. I was always just having lean chicken breast, maybe rice, loads of vegetables, loads of broccoli, carrots, peas, what we sort of eat a lot over here traditionally in the UK. And I saw it was getting me places, but it wasn't getting me as much mass as I wanted. So you'd increase the amount of food you take in. You might just have an extra scoop of like protein powder, or a tablespoon of peanut butter with your meal, sort of thing. You'd find little ways just to add a bit more energy to what you're eating.
Yeah.
And I found that was useful up to a point. And then when I got to the sort of higher energy intakes, I found my guts would be disrupted then. But the thing about bodybuilding is we have this insanely high tolerance to suffer. We do put our bodies for a lot. I'm not just saying that arrogantly as if, I suffer more than the next person.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the mindset is different. We will push it beyond, what's the word? Turn the envelope, sort of thing, just to get the results we want. And that comes through in our eating patterns. The way we consume our meals is, on the clock. We get very methodical. I guess some of that is partly like goal based, like okay, if I train at this time and I need this much food beforehand, and you sort of get in a rhythm and your body becomes regimented. You know how big of a meal you can have before or after the gym, and what you find upsets your sleep patterns. So you sort of pick up and analyze the sort of data you can get along the way, and that's basically what I've been doing. And as it's got further down the line, I've just been eating ridiculous amounts of food. When I was in uni, I left, I believe, 2018, 2019. Up until then, I was probably having a pizza every day. Quite standard. It'd be last meal pizza with chicken breast to add the protein, sort of thing. After the gym would be probably 200 to 300 grams of Haribo, something like that. So like a big pack, sort of thing. And that was normal. That would be every workout. It wouldn't just be leg day or something. My carbs at one point got to about 1,000 grams or so. Protein was around 300 and fat probably 150 or thereabouts. It's a lot of food, and what I've sort of noticed in doing that is you're putting so much volume in your gut. I think it's going to I'm 6'1", quite a large sort of person, but I can't tolerate that much food, at least not without really suffering digestively. So basically what I noticed was I was eating maybe 600-700 gram meals each meal, but I was doing that 5-6 times a day. So you got to think, I was eating 3.5 or maybe sometimes 5 kilos of meals a day, and that wouldn't include the 9 liters or 10 liters of water I was having on top of that. The intra-workout shakes. The water, I was so thirsty, like I had to get my mouth so dry because I was always eating. Like my jaw was sore. I was always trying to put more and more food down. Unfortunately, it's like you're sort of chasing the dragon. You're trying to get more results, but you have to do more and you have to suffer more to get the same result. And eventually, you just end up inflamed, sore, and some people will stick at it and let themselves tolerate the suffering, but I've got to the point now where I've had enough. My body's had enough, and now I'm consuming something like, my meal might be about 200 grams now, and that'll be it. Like I said, I'm a 6'1", 245 pound bodybuilder. In relatively good shape at the moment, like 8-10% body fat now, and I'm not eating these massive meals that you sort of would see in a typical bodybuilder's diet. So that's what I found has been a big benefit to me, just decreasing the volume of the food and That's through, carnivore eating, so that's protein and fat.
Yeah, so how do you eat right now? Like how many meals do you eat? How many what are your macros right now, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my meal frequency, I have 5 a day. I've got quite a strict sort of weird system. It works at something like 8 a.m., 11, 2, 5 and 8. It seems to just end up that way. It happens to be every 3 hours, just based on my schedule and what I do generally. I do find sometimes now I have to remind myself to eat. And a lot of people in the sort of carnivore, ancestral eating, maybe in keto sort of space, a lot of people do 2, maybe 3 meals a day. Some people do 1 meal a day. I think Bart probably does 1, maybe 2, and that's quite normal. But the thing is, I'm a larger individual, so me eating, say just to maintain my weight up, it'd be about 4.5, maybe 4 to 4.5 thousand calories a day. That's going to be a lot of food if I was doing that OMAD. It's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to do that. I mean, I could do it for like a day or something, but it's not something I'd sustain. And ultimately, I want a sort of an eating pattern, frequency that I can manage to keep getting my nutrients in without really bogging down my system, So I find that having less meals than 5 seems to slow me down a little bit in that regard. And in terms of macros, I'm getting to it. Right now, I'm doing something like, I kind of ballpark it now, but I try to just hit a calorie goal just for the sake of it. It's about 275 protein, 15 carbs, and I think about 180 fat. So that's not an overly ketogenic style of eating.
Sure.
I do seem to benefit from the gluconeogenesis from the higher protein.
Yeah.
I've noticed when I've gone too high fat that my digestion is better. My gut's smoother after I eat, because I'm putting less actual volume of food, because fat's very dense in energy. But what it is my guts just don't tolerate it. I think I've got impaired gallbladder function. That's what I suspect in a recent blood test, actually. Anyway, so I'm not able to sort of do much with higher fat amounts without gut disruption. And that's not to say other people can't, sort of succeed with their goals doing that. But I do think it's just too much for me right now. Like for my sort of health conditions, a lot of them will just take time to heal. I've been put my body for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's basically where I'm at the moment. Meal wise, I eat, I'd say relaxed carnivore, if that's a thing. So I have sugar-free sweeteners. That'd be like a sucralose or a aspartame. I'm not too fussed about that right now. I know some people have like issues with those sort of things with electrolyte balance. It's not seemed to impaired my results or health benefits so far. But yeah, I'm doing meat, dairy, fish, eggs daily. I have days sometimes where I fancy like more beef, maybe, or more fish. I have a high egg consumption. I'm eating probably 8 to 10 eggs a day at the moment, and that's normal for me. But yeah, that's basically my diet as it stands.
So would you say that this is enough food for you to keep building?
It's hard to say. I mean, I've done a diet basically for the last 12 weeks. I've lost something like 30 to 35 pounds, depending on what time I got to step on the scale, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm eating 2,000, what I just outlined my diet as pretty much. And I actually look more muscular, which is funny. I've lost fat, so you will look more toned. But the measurement that I use to identify if I've lost muscle is my strength in the gym, my performance. So if before, when I was 35 pounds heavier sort of thing, I was lifting 100 kilos or something, I'm still doing that same 100 kilos, the same form. I'm quite meticulous. So I wouldn't say I've lost muscle eating, even less. But I think eating less when you're eating better foods, that's what I think is quite key. People don't really put much attention into that. I think the average person can probably maintain a decent level of muscle mass with quite a low energy intake, but just getting sufficient protein and fat. I don't really believe you have to eat a ton, to be honest, but I'm at the point now without like using excessive performance enhancing drugs. I'm like it, like you know, if I'm using a higher dose or something, then it's going to just be, it's going to put more sort of stress on my body, and I'm going to have to use that much more to get that much result. I seem to be very close to my sort of natural cap sort of thing, so I don't think eating much more would give me more results, sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm just a bit, if we can move back in time a little bit, like I'm a bit curious about when you were eating a lot of carbs, etc. How often would you compete, and how long before the competition would you start cutting down, and how long would you be eating crap for?
What I basically found was with a standard sort of diet, I would eat a lot in the off season. I'd gain a lot of body fat. I mean, I was never fat. I still had like abs, like so a few lines sort of thing. But by bodybuilding standards, you know, I was a little bit soft, what they might call. Yeah, I found I was just eating so much food. I gained fat. I'm rehashing the same point here, but I would spend about 14, 16 weeks dieting, sometimes longer. So it was a long time because I had to take a lot of body fat off.
Yeah.
But mentally, in your head, when you're thinking, all right, it's not just a month. You know, most people can stick to something for a month. Oh, they quit coffee for a week or a month or, you know, a few weeks. It's quite, you struggle, but it's doable. But you're doing something here for 3, 4, maybe even some people 5 months. You know, it's a long time to stick at something. And when your body fat's getting lower, your food amount's getting lower, you're sort of hungry, you're starving, especially on those sort of diets. You do find you have to just, I don't know how to describe it, you do find you just suffer more.
Yeah.
And the result of that is, as we know, like binge eating. So after the show, it would be horrendous. I'd have probably weeks on end of just justifying eating all these foods. I've worked so hard, I deserve this. Fortunately, I could rein it back quite quickly, but I was at the point in my head where I felt like if I didn't have something, like I used to think, if I think of like having a chocolate bar, which I don't really like now, but or a packet of sweets, if I want that same packet of sweets the next day, I've got to have it. I have to have it. Like there's no ifs, no buts. Now, if I thought like I had a fleeting thought the other day, I thought I really fancy a few slices of toast, like 2, 3 slices, you know, loads of butter, a pinch of pepper or something. I'm weird.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was just, the thought came to my mind, but then I thought I might not feel better for that. Like my body's sort of adjusted to what I'm doing now. And that's ultimately what you have to find, something is that you can just keep in balance and eating similar sort of foods each day. I mean, my shopping cart now is probably like 6, 7, maybe 8 items, all animal foods. I buy some squash every now and then, like some sugar-free squash, but I'm not sort of spending all this time thinking and eyeballing all these other foods. So I went to the Arnold Classic UK exhibition on Saturday. That's basically a fitness convention for bodybuilding, MMA, you know, different strength sports, things like that. And it just became so much like the way the industry's gone now is different. It's I'd walk by and be like these trays of donuts going past me. I'm like, this fitness convention, like these people meant to be healthy.
Yeah.
Then they're advertising it, and it's not like they're protein donuts or whatever it is, or you know, special health food, even like the vegan protein balls. Or there's nothing like that. It was like it was literally just a donut, like, you know, sugary Krispy Kreme looking thing. And I thought, yeah, this doesn't appeal to me. This isn't right. Like, yeah, I might enjoy it momentarily, but beyond that, I'll probably feel worse for it.
Yeah.
And probably feel dreadful for it even later, sort of thing. Then in my head of, you know, it's like a fleeting thought, and I think people become very reactive to these fleeting thoughts. I'd say at the moment how I've been recovering from it is that I'm not having those issues now. I'm not plagued by seeing someone else have, you know, a big dessert on the dinner table sort of thing. It doesn't bother me at all, you know.
That's awesome. So when you were binging, what types of food did you eat? I'm really curious.
I'm an ice cream lover,
Right.
so a lot of ice cream. For me, I'm not really into Ben and Jerry's and that sort of thing. It seems to, yeah, I'm
It's my
a bit
favorite.
of a nutcase like that. I'm one of those serial killer people that just eat like vanilla ice cream. Like I'm talking about the plain store bought basic
Yeah.
simple Asda Smart Price or whatever it is over there. Like, you know, just basic like $1, £1 sort of
Yeah.
box. That does it for me. Just that, or sometimes I'll like a bag of Skittles or something, or Haribo. I like the Tang Fastics quite a lot. Pizza's not really appealed to me that much. I like Indian food and Chinese. I like different cultures. But now it's always just fleeting thoughts now. It doesn't plague me like it used to.
Yeah. So when you were doing that, did you ever think like this really isn't great for me? Or did you just like, nah, I don't care. I'm just gonna do this because I've been working so hard and I've been dieting for so long and I don't give a shit.
I used to find ways of justifying my head. I'd think this is bad for me, but you know, I got a £20 tip the other day or something. I think, well, I should spend that money really because they want me to enjoy myself. Like I find always like bizarre
Yeah.
ideas of how to sort of get around it. And I think I would be on the Just Eat app or whatever people seem to use nowadays, and I'd order maybe a meal for two sort of thing, so quite a big meal anyway, and I'd just sit there and eat all that, and I'd be stuffed, and I wouldn't sleep very well, and I did feel guilt, and the day after I felt horrible for it. Like I did feel I shouldn't have done that, and how it affects your mood, and you know when you're sort of messing around your blood glucose levels like that, you do feel terrible. Like people don't realize, and it's not until they sort of take these triggers out that they realize how much
Yeah.
better they can feel. You know.
Yeah, I find that, I mean, you were probably doing it to the extreme, but it seems like that's the thing. It's like we always regret that we're doing it the day after, and then we do it again in the evening.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just this vicious cycle. So the fact that you can actually break out of that must require a lot of willpower. Like when you had planned on going back, when it was time to start cutting again, like what went through your head then? What was it? Just like, I need to get to my goal? Was it, are you so goal motivated that you could motivate yourself with just having that goal, or was it something else like helping you actually get out of that way of eating?
Yeah. So it's quite a deep rooted question. It's quite personal. It's a really good one as well. So I've always been intrinsically motivated. So the ideas and thoughts that surround what I'd like to sort of achieve and overcome, they're very much based on the fact that I feel such a sense of pride. Like when I think of last recently, oh, name like the three happiest moments of your life that, well, maybe five, like three of them at least are a sense of pride, like sense of self-worth. That seems important to me. So what drives me basically getting to the point is that I like to reach a goal. I like to analyze things. So I might eat a pizza on Sunday, or I eat a pizza on Wednesday and think, oh, I feel terrible. You know, then I'd decide, okay, I need to start competing. You know, in a few months, sort of thing. I'm gonna start my diet like today. I'd
Mm.
start it the next meal. I wouldn't have this idea or finish off the day. So I can just flip and I think that might be because I'm a bit autistic as well. I don't know. It seems that I can, once I get my mind set on something, I can just rain at it and rain at it and rain at it, and I don't seem to stop. To some people's demise, unfortunately, so they'll see me get obsessed with something like amount of hours I spent on YouTube recently trying to sort out my microphone and webcam is unbelievable. You wouldn't believe it. just getting all the logistics side of it all and get technology working.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do get really involved in everything. I'm looking at ways to sort of improve everything I do, even like my sleep patterns, my exposure to light, the supplements I use, like vitamin D or things like that. Diet, like I'm someone that comes from a place where I've been ill and had chronic fatigue for so long. I think that might be why I sort of went towards bodybuilding, is that I knew that they'd eat a lot of food, and I thought, oh, I had that connection in my head where I'd think, oh, eat more food, eat more food, eat more food, and then that would give me more energy. Then I'd also think, oh, I feel glum today, oh, I feel bad, you know. I'd have like depression and anxiety, and it would be bad to the point where I would feel I've had a bad day today, someone's upset me or something daft's happened, and it'd really grate on me. I'd feel like I've deserved a packet of sweets today, and I'd always justify it, and it just gets beyond a joke at that point, you know.
Yeah. Well, most of us are doing that. I've never done any bodybuilding, and I will still justify it with, you know, I have a good diet in general, so, you know, a little bit of whatever, you know, chocolates on top.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't matter too much, but it does.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, it kind of goes back to that 80-20 rule, you know, where people say, oh, 80% good and 20% all your life. I think, yeah, for some people, they might live a long, healthy life and get to the point where they can, I don't know, drink and smoke on a weekend, but the rest of the week they'll be, you know, clean sort of thing. But some people just are on the other end on the spectrum. They might not be able to have any deviances. Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson, people who sort of follow that particular part of the diet, they have to be so regimented. Like this, if they use a different oil in their food, or, you know, if they use a seed oil versus tallow, they've got to take it quite seriously. And the average thing is, the average person won't listen to these people and think they're telling the truth. But the average person isn't in their sort of health status to be able to identify the problem. Exactly. They think they're doing what the best they can to get around this. So I admire these people so much. I mean, they've said themselves, like, well, if I could eat cake every day, or, you know, or have just a standard diet, I bloody well would. You know, you think, well, they're not doing this just to be like crazy people that just eat meat. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, who didn't wish that cake was healthy for us? That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like, do you have any like idea how common this is? Like, would you dare to put a figure on how many people are actually developing some sort of food disorder or disordered eating in general when they are into like bodybuilding or, you know, fitness competitions or whatever?
In the fit space, I mean, we can look at those studies have done on people in social media where, you know, they might identify, you know, Instagram users being more likely to have an eating disorder, or, you know, things like that, where they sort of see these images constantly, like streaming through, you know, these fit, healthy, fabulous sort of people, you know, looking the best ever. If I was to put a number on it, I'd say it does depend. I mean, probably say it's more common across women, at least in my sort of studies, maybe 20 to 30%. Some people might have a different idea, I don't know, but men probably a bit less. I mean, there is a degree of it, but that's strictly speaking about like the, I'd say more like the orthorexia side of it, like the tracking, the portion control, the number side of it all. That seems to be very common. It's a very fine line for a lot of, especially female competitors in like the bodybuilding physique sort of world. I feel like in some cases they may sort of use it as like a ploy to be able to have and use their sort of disorder.
Yeah.
So it makes it almost like they accept in their head, like, I need to track all my food and eat less for this competition. The reality is they've got an aversion to food, and they have an unhealthy relationship. So they're seeing it as, okay, this is my quarter tablespoon of, I don't know, peanut butter or whatever people like nowadays. And they think, oh, that's about as much as I can have today. They have that and they think, oh, I've done good. They get a relief from under eating, and I think it's something that's never been spoken about before. And I've seen so many women like chronically undereat. I'm talking like, back to the calories again, like 800 calories a day for months on end. That's with a lot of drugs, an hour, 2 hours cardio a day. And it's way more common than what you hear about. You sort of see people say things on social media like, oh, I have a balanced diet and I eat enough food and all that sort of thing. And the reality is they don't. The last few weeks they are eating just lettuce just to get into shape sometimes. But it's very behind the curtain sort of thing. It's very,
So do you think that this is actually caused by the sport and how we're looking at it, or do you think that people who are already, having an eating disorder are kind of drawn to competing in these kind of things because they like to take it to the extreme?
It could be like a body image thing, I guess. Like, I mean, for me, I can speak from personally, probably better than other people, but for me, I mean, I'm looking at myself in the mirror each day. I don't really like doing that. I'm not very vain for a bodybuilder, funny enough. I really don't look in the mirror that much. When I'm posting a picture on Instagram, like, consult me for coaching sort of thing, I'm doing that cringing in my head thinking, this is weird. Like, I'm trying to sell my service by having my body on a page on the internet. I find that bizarre. The thing is, that's what gets clicks sort of thing. And,
Yep.
I mean, I can see how some people would say, it's an eating disorder to try and attain like the perfect sort of physique. But for me, it's just being better. Like, I know I'm more muscular than the average person. I know my skill set's different to other people's from what I've developed. But, that's just one thing, one measurement. I'm not trying to be the best at everything. It's just, I want to be better at what I do. And that's my own sort of mantra towards it all.
Okay, so on another note, you did say earlier that you kind of almost like stumbled across carnivore. So you just naturally started doing that rather than doing any sort of research before you started doing that, or how did you start?
Yeah, so even before I knew about like Sean Baker or anyone like that, that was kind of like the adjustment thing, like the reassurance I needed to think, well, some people are actually doing this, so maybe I'll give it another go. But I initially was just trialing it out. I was just doing meat, fish, eggs, cheese sort of thing, and I was eating very lean, and I'd get really good like body composition results. Like my fat would like fly off sort of thing. I wouldn't feel good, and I was like, I'm doing something wrong here. I'll come back to another time and sort of suss it out. So that's when I was doing the carnivore diet initially. So I wasn't influenced by anyone else. It was my own thing, and that was actually brought about by what people do in the late stages of bodybuilding competition preparation.
Okay.
So they don't do a carnivore diet, so to speak, but they do something where they're eating a lot of like chicken, turkey, white fish.
Yeah.
They'd add in like cauliflower and broccoli. So it's just basically lean meat and veg. I didn't do the veg. It didn't appeal to me anyway. I was like, well, if I've got an extra, if it's 100, back then my way of thinking, like if it's 100 calories of broccoli, I'd rather have 100 calories extra for meat.
Yeah.
So it just made sense to me even back then. But yeah, coming back to it, my sort of path then sort of crossed with Ted Naiman. So he was using the protein energy sort of ratio thing, PE diet. So he's quite protein centric. Like his ideas around like, you sort of get enough protein in your diet, then everything else, like your appetite, how you feel, fall into place. And I've kind of noticed that myself. Like as long as I get my protein to a certain level, I don't have like the sort of the hunger that I'd have before. Like I'd be full, but I'd be hungry. Like I'd eat, and I was like, my stomach's out here, but I want to eat more food. Like, why is my brain telling me this?
Yeah.
With this sort of way of eating, I'm not having that anymore. It's gone. So
Amazing. Well, that's pretty cool, because then you just came into it without having like a bias towards any specific way of doing the carnivore diet. So I know kind of in general terms what Ted Naiman is doing, but what's his point of view on fat? And when you came across that, was there anything there that suggested to you that maybe increasing my fat will make me feel a lot better than I do on just lean meats?
Yeah, so what I was looking at people like Sean. That was what brings me to Sean Baker. Finally, we'll pass the leaf to him in carnivore, but it's that he was eating fatty steaks, and I thought, why isn't he fat? Like something's not right there. It doesn't quite make sense. I didn't click. Like you need an energy substrate.
Yeah.
Gluconeogenesis does work to a point to get you to your goals in terms of like exercise performance. But basically, Ted Naiman's approach is, I want to try and get it right, but basically he says if you get enough protein to a certain threshold, you'll find your threshold within your calorie intake. And so that's 30%, 50%. Then you fill in the rest with fat or carbs or combination of both based on what you prefer and how you feel best. I think that's a good stepping stone along the way sort of thing. It gets people to eating a proper sort of human diet, but it doesn't address some other things. So like the fiber, he's quite focused on having a high fiber diet.
Okay.
I'm a bit sort of surprising a bit because he's a very well-read person, so I'm not sure why or what his current thoughts are. It's just based on what I've looked back at like in the past sort of thing. But yeah, he's very much high protein, high fiber, and he has something called a PE ratio calculator, which you can find online. Basically, you put in your protein, fat, carbs, fiber. Basically, the more protein and fiber you have, the higher the ratio will go. So it'll be closer towards like lean. At the bottom will be like fat. So you have like lard, lard or butter at the bottom. You'd have like lean turkey at the top. I have found myself, at least when I go somewhere in the middle, so my body tends to, I almost say like stagnate. Like I don't gain fat or lose fat. I sort of find my equilibrium and what's going on. But I find like obviously the higher protein I have, it does seem to increase my satiety. My fat loss doesn't increase. So I'm someone that seems to respond to that. I think you're quite different in that regard. You seem to benefit more from. I follow everyone online.
How do you have time?
You sort of have you have a higher fat diet. So, I mean, the thing is, that doesn't mean what you're wrong or I'm wrong.
Sure.
Two different paths. I mean, it might be that my body just deals with protein better and it can metabolize it into energy better than other people. Like I've got the issue with having the higher fat ratio. For you, it might be that too much protein can elevate your glucose too much or whatever it is. I don't know. But, there's variance within the carnivore diet, and that's what I like. It's not so much trying to hit an exact number. It's more about just eating the foods you want to feel the way you want.
Yeah, I mean, with me, it's not just about what's happening physiologically. It's like there's a limit for how much meat I can eat. Then my body just says, I'm going to puke if I'm eating more meat, but I don't have a problem eating more fat, for example. And what I find as well is that when I have a very high fat meal, and I'm talking about the difference between like 80% fat and 70% fat, is that I'm always satiated when I've had 80% fat. But if I'm eating 70% fat, I still feel like I'm hungry, but I can't eat more protein. And that's kind of like an annoying feeling in my stomach. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why am I still hungry? But I really, just the thought about having a steak or an egg or whatever, it just makes me feel a bit sick. So I know I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how your body has these different mechanisms. I mean, it just goes back to the individuality. Like, for me, it seems like if I eat below, it'd be low for most people, maybe I don't know, but 200 grams of protein. If I eat below that, I feel it. Like I feel weak, frail. I feel like I'm really, I would say I'm actually quite hungry. But it was
But you have a lot of mass to maintain as well.
That's what I mean. I mean, I've got to maintain like 90 kilos of lean body mass. It takes
it's more than I weigh.
It takes protein. You got to sort of give your body the building blocks. But you mean some people are just eating way less than me. I know someone online. think she's eating something like 60 grams protein a day and 200 plus fat.
Yeah.
That's quite common actually. I've seen a lot of groups do that. You sort of fall in around 80-20 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Most people like that. And I'm like, I couldn't do that sort of ratio. I'd really struggle, you know. At
Yeah,
least
maybe when
in
you get old and sedentary, maybe it will work.
Yeah, maybe you could be completely right. Yeah, my body might just adjust to it and find its way over time as I become less active. My need for protein will be less. I don't plan on being 240 plus pounds when I'm 50 years old.
Sure, I can understand it. Just don't convert it to fat.
Yeah.
Like you see, I mean, I think that is very common as well. Like people who have been really, really fit when they're younger and then they just stop, but they continue to sort of maintain their mass, but it's converting into fat rather than being muscle.
Yeah, it always comes down to like it's like they can't get out of the idea that they're eating less food, like to maintain what they're doing. So they might be eating 3,000, back to calories again, like 3,000, 400,000 calories a day, maintaining a muscular fit sort of body, and they're very active. To them, looking at a plate and seeing the size of the plate like shrunk by half, like for them I imagine it could be quite a mental challenge. It's quite it can be quite tough for some people. I mean, not a lot of people talk about the transition between bodybuilding on stage and like off stage, like coming off it, sort of thing. But many don't actually try and drop muscle at all. They sort of stay the same. They still eat the meals, and I mean, after that long of doing it, I'd be quite surprised because you put your body through a lot of grief to eat that much food anyway. I just find that bizarre myself.
Yeah, I can imagine. So after you, how long have you been on carnivore, by the way?
Probably, God, with the exception of Christmas, probably since about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
With the exception of like maybe a few months where I've just been like off the rails sort of thing.
Okay. So after the first competition you had while being on the carnivore diet, you didn't binge after that?
I did, to be honest, I
Yeah.
did, but I didn't do it as bad. I did two. Basically, when you're very lean, people won't speak about this very often, but when you're very lean, because I was having 500 plus grams of protein a day. I never got hungry. I was never actually hungry for food, but it's like desire for energy was so high.
Yeah.
Like I just look at food and think that's going to give me 50 grams of fat. That's going to give me loads of sugar and this, that. I was just like looking at things like thinking energy, and yeah. I mean, I was trying to gain back lost body fat. So I was hoping that my mind and my body would feel a bit better and have a bit more energy. Looking back, it's not ideal, but granted, I did that for maybe 2 or 3 days, and that was it.
Okay.
But before, it would be weeks or even months.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really good.
Mm.
And what kind of drove that? Was that more a desire to want to stay on the diet and make that work, or was it generally that I'm done now and I don't need to do
I
this?
just felt like I was done, like I ticked all the boxes in my head, whereas I I don't really have. If you said to me, "Oh, what do you really crave? Like, what would be a great cheat meal right now?" Sort of thing. I feel like, or just like a load of butter bites that my girlfriend makes. It's like a sweet treat basically. It's butter, and we won't see what the ingredients are. That's quite under wraps at the moment. But yeah, just like a really nice meat, maybe like a cheesy egg omelette with some salmon in it or something. And I think about that and I think, yeah, that'd be really nice right now. Like just loads of butter and things like that.
Awesome. Just out of curiosity, like, what's your food bill like?
Not nearly as bad as what many people think.
Yeah.
Spend less. Probably spend about half what the average bodybuilder spends on food a week. It's about £65, I'd say. So that's
okay. That's not too bad.
$80 maybe, something like that. $90.
Yeah.
So it's not an awful lot really. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing is like whey protein powders. I know a lot of people don't like them. I know you come from sort of like testing and sort of supplement industry, like the fish oils and things like that. but I've seemed to not had a. I'm not really at a loss taking them. I quite enjoy them, sort of thing, you know. So I sort of look. I won't say quite say I look forward to them, but I quite like having them, so I just keep them in. Yeah, protein powder seems to be a quick way of getting enough protein at least, and the fat is eggs. Butter here is relatively cheap. We just actually got a kilo of beef fat in the slow cooker right now, just rendering, so we can get some tallow. We paid 50p for that.
Nice.
So that's going to be a lot of fat, like fat and energy for 50p.
I want your butcher. I have to pay like $5 a kilo for my beef fat.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
that's mental. Yeah, I mean, people. I think it just depends where you are. Like I've seen people in all areas of the world pay little amounts and large amounts. It depends if the way they're looking at the butcher is just thinking, "Oh, these are scraps. We don't need these," or if they have a market for it. And just so happens that where we are, there's no market for it, so they just keep it and we buy it, sort of thing.
Nice. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
So that's surprising, but yeah. I mean, to be honest, if I had to try to get 300 grams of protein each day, I would have to do some sort of protein powder, whether I thought that was optimal or not. Like, there is no way that I would be able to do that. So there's no judgment here. It's just like, I completely understand why you would do that.
It's like a little shot. Like if you're having, say, 5 meals, and each meal's, I don't know, 60, 70 grams of protein or something.
Yeah.
That powder and water is only about 300, maybe 400 milliliters. That's quite easy to get down for most people. So
yeah, for sure. So have you competed twice while being on the carnivore diet?
Once last year, so I just did one show.
Okay.
The thing about that was I was dieting for about 18 months prior to that. For some reason, everything in the world was locked down. It's quite frustrating to get into a gym. And by default, there was no competitions running, no venues were open to host bodybuilding competitions. So I was just basically very, very, very lean for a very long time. And yeah, I was doing a carnivore diet, and I got in shape a lot quicker than doing the standard like bodybuilding diet.
That's so cool. So if you would compare your results after doing the carnivore diet with before in the competition, like did you do better, or I mean, I guess it depends on the other competitors as well, but
yeah, you're only as good as your placing, it seems sometimes. But I was in probably my best shape ever in my last show. You know, I looked the part. You know, you can look at my Facebook photos and things, and you see, yeah, I was in shape. I did have, you know, striated glutes sort of thing. I was very, very cut. My muscle mass was just as good as before, probably actually better.
Yeah.
And yeah, it didn't, in terms of like comparing the diet as well. I mean, like I said, it's just easy to get in shape. The level of suffering before was so much. Level of suffering last year, especially in terms of like hunger, was far, far, far less. I was not. I struggle. You know, you struggle when you're low body fat. It is hard. Your body does struggle. You're tired. You sit down. Your bum hurts on like anything you sit down on.
I would have thought you had enough muscle there.
No, the muscle's what compresses the bone.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, you get brain fog basically, and that just you get so wear down. But the hunger and the appetite suppression was much better, so it was more tolerable.
That's so cool. I mean, they've done studies on rats when they give them like a high-ish protein diet, and then or high protein and fat, I think, and then they just put them on a restrictive diet for a while, and then they give them that diet again, and what they see is like the dopamine reward system is just like lighting up 30% more than it would have before the restriction. So there is so much to it, like the compulsion to eat is probably increasing a lot, because 30% increase from where we already are is kind of quite a lot.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's so many studies nowadays. Even if you're not going to do the ratios that I've been doing in terms of protein and fat, you'll see even just protein alone, like the whole Ted Naiman thing came from, I believe, an insect study. They
Okay.
sort of said the guy just came across the research randomly. Basically, these insects were given proportionally higher protein intake in their diet, and as it got higher, their energy intake, so their sort of desire and want to consume more calories, went down. You
Mm.
think, well, that's a perfect recipe for losing weight, because you get to eat more of something,
Yeah.
but not and still like lose weight sort of thing. And they've applied that in some sort of maybe some rodent studies sort of thing. But he's noticed of people that just doing that, like hitting a protein threshold for a lot of people, will help curb those sort of binge eating tendencies and the appetite.
Yeah. It's amazing what we can do when we actually eat properly. So
Yeah,
if
for sure.
so if someone was to ask you, like, if they are having this problem with binge eating, especially if they're into bodybuilding or something, what if they could do like one thing, what do you think is the most important thing that they do to kind of stop that pattern?
I'd probably say get on a carnivore diet. I don't see many people doing a carnivore diet that are overeating, to be honest.
Hmm.
It seems just hitting a protein amount, so finding how much you need, not bogging down your system with so many carbs where in your gut you've got a lot of stretch receptors, so mechanoreceptors. It's almost like if you're adding all these salads and loads of water and vegetables into your diet to make your gut expand, so you think, "Oh, I've eaten enough." That's
Yeah.
the wrong way to go about it. You want to get true nutrient, appetite suppression and leptin signaling, like your body just knowing you've had enough food from the nutrients that you take in. Like I said earlier, I get from meat and animal fat, so I'm not eating giant meals anymore. And a lot of bodybuilders now are just eating so much vegetables and salads and drinking so much water, like especially near their meal times, that I think it's just making their guts like stretch, so they
Yeah.
have to keep trying to fill it back up just to get to that bliss point.
Yeah.
I think now my sort of bliss point where I've eaten enough is a lot lower, so that's what I'd probably look at. So the protein and the quantity of food, like cutting down on all the veg and plants and water, maybe.
Yeah. So do you have any other gems that you want to share with people?
Um,
The secrets.
I can't tell too many. Um, it's tough. Are there any sort of interesting things you wanted to ask in particular that you've been hesitant to, maybe, or because I always find people will ask me questions after a chat, sort of thing.
Not really. I think you've been quite honest with, what was going on. And I think, I don't know if that is common in like in bodybuilding or the fitness area versus the general population, but you're so focused on what you want to achieve that is kind of driving everything. And as long as you can justify the way that you're eating, that is what's going to drive that. But then you're able to actually switch focus, which is kind of unusual. And that's where most people will trip up, that they don't have like a goal that they want to achieve strongly enough so that they can get out of this eating behavior. But for you, it's completely different. Like you can get out of that eating behavior, but then somehow, like, you've told yourself that this is fine, it's actually not so bad, because it will, even if it's not necessarily good for my blood glucose or whatever, at least it will help me bulk up again and build more muscle. So you're kind of justifying it that way. So I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, that the problem for most people is that they're like, yeah, I want to lose weight, but that's not very motivating. So they don't have that big driver, but you have it, but that driver is actually going to help you to continue binge eating. So it's kind of like almost the opposite, which is sort of interesting. And that's why I was asking you, like, do you think that people with eating disorders are kind of drawn to this because then they will have a really good reason of doing it, and then sort of almost punishing themselves in between?
Yeah, it could well be that. I mean, it comes down to like whatever your result is your will to try and get towards that result as
Yeah.
much as your immediate short-term want. You know, I will, become the best bodybuilder in the world, sort of thing. or
Yeah.
is it that I want that donut? You have to,
Yeah.
people weigh up in their head their own value and what's more important to them. And ultimately that's what's going to give them, the sort of, I'm going to do this,
Yeah. And I mean, what I would say to any bodybuilder is like, why wouldn't you be able to eat well and be the best bodybuilder in the world? Which is what you're kind of figuring out now, which is exciting. But often we get so stuck in that one way of thinking that it's like, this is the way. But we don't even ask ourselves the question, like, is it possible to do this in a more healthy way that is actually going to help me long term and not just until the next competition?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly why I'm doing podcasts like this. Sort of my thing is obviously bodybuilding, and I'm very health focused nowadays. And what I've seen in bodybuilding is a lot of deaths in the last few years. It might not be necessarily through diet, but just making better health choices, being a bit more alert and considering what damage you could be doing. So one of my idols, Cedric Millen, died about 6 months ago. He's he was one of the best bodybuilders in the world, and that was really a big eye opener for me.
How old was
And
he?
that's why he was probably no more than 40 odd, early 40s,
Yeah, that's sad.
young. Yeah, but it's that I want to be able to help people, so I have different outlets to be able to reach other people. So I'm on loads of different Facebook groups. I'm giving my sort of expertise and knowledge on it, and how I've just experienced it all really. I want to be able to sort of give bodybuilders another direction, another avenue to take. At least make them aware of it, give them the informed choice, and that's what I think is important.
That's awesome. So if anyone wants to get in contact with you or follow you somewhere, where can they find you, and what different avenues do you have for them to connect with you?
So I have an Instagram account, which is composition_consultant.
Yeah.
And a website, which is compositionconsultant.com. And I have a YouTube now, which I've mentioned earlier a little bit that I've been having issues with. That's just composition space consultant.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your willingness to talk about this important topic that I think we have swept under the carpet for way too long. I think it's time that we, as a population in general, are being more transparent with eating disorders and, what's happening when we subscribe to that, basically. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. Hope it helps a lot of people.
I hope so.